Hey guys, Kevin of Wood Magazine. We shot a video on a quilt rack that I've been working on. It's basically a bent, cold form bent lamination that we've been kind of showing. And the last video I did, we did a video on making the form. And we'll get to that in a second. But basically what I'm doing now today is I'm going to show you how I actually glue these separate strips up. And what I have here is I basically have 12 strips of 3/32 inch thick mahogany. I'm going to start with about 1 3/4 inches, which I've milled this out 8/4. I'm going to try to keep these as close together as possible, side to side, as I'm putting it in the form to minimize my waste, but I'm hoping to finish up with about 1 5/8 inch thick wide lamination. So I've got about 1 inch, and I'm hoping for about 1 5/8 inches. So the first thing I'm going to do is I basically have 88-inch long laminations, and so I can index it in my form. I have drawn a center line basically on these 88-inch long strips, so I can index that in my jig and make sure that I've got equal legs on that either side, and you'll see that when I get to that form. So a quick way, or an easier way, to add glue, and I'm using Type-On. This is actually hide glue, and because I'm doing 12 strips, it's to your advantage to use a hide glue because it's slow setting and it gives you plenty of time to work the material, get it into the form, get everything adjusted before you have a panic of your yellow glue or white glue setting up on you. So basically what I'm doing, and you can use your own hide glue that if you want to make your own, as far as if you have a glue pot, go ahead. I'm just doing this for convenience. So I lay down a strip, and this is just a disposable roller I picked up at the home center, and you'll see that you really don't need a ton of glue. You saw that I just put down 1 bead of glue, and you see how evenly that's spreading out. One, this minimizes the mess as you're gluing it up, and two, less likely of sticking it to your form and having a hard time getting your form off. So really you just need a nice even coating of glue, and this roller will do just that trick. I'm going to flip that guy over, and we're just going to continue as we go through all of these laminations. Okay guys, alright, we got everything glued up, and I've tried to keep the ends lined up and keep my index line marked up here in the middle. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to have to wrestle with this guy. I'm going to move my side forms out of the way. An extra pair of hands is handy for this, but I've found a way that you can do this without another set of hands. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of push this in here, and I want to try to keep that somewhat where it's supposed to be. It's going to come around on you. I'm going to hook a clamp kind of over the edge here. This is just going to kind of hold that in place, or it should. And then I'm going to come around, do the other side. You're just trying to keep it somewhat in position so you can get that top block on. Okay. Alright, so lining up my lines. And it doesn't have to be perfect, because what I've done is I've actually made these edges, or these pieces, a little bit 3 to 4 inches longer than they need to be. So there's plenty of excess. So I'm going to tighten this down. If you guys can kind of see my index lines on my jig here and here, and then you can faintly see the index lines of my lamination sandwich. So as you're tightening up that first clamp, you may have to shift that caul. Mallet works great. And if you're using these F-style clamps, which I'm using, you may end up running out of thread. No worries. So what I'll do is I'll put on a couple on the sides, like so, just to kind of hold that in place, and then I can reset this clamp. The other thing I want to make sure I do before I get this too bloody tight is make sure that one of these pieces are all the way down in the form. And if you have to, just take a block, tap that down. Like that. Okay. The other thing I did too to this form, I didn't talk about that in the other video, is that I actually faced the insides of that form with some clear packing tape, just in case if the glue does squeeze out, it hopefully won't squeeze out and then attach to the form. So I've got my top tight, and now I'm just going to kind of work myself around the corners here. And I'm just going to work both sides kind of evenly as I get around that corner. And then next up, we're going to get in here and add these forms, the side forms. Right sides. See, I'm just kind of coaxing them into place here, just a little bit at a time. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Alright, so at this point I can start kind of clamping across the width of this. Just slowly start bringing the sides together. We want to make sure the ends of my form, all these line up. And again, kind of as you're working down the form, go ahead and make sure you're getting all those laminations seated down on the bottom, flush with the bottom edge of the form. So they should be touching the table. Okay, once I get that first bar clamp on, I can come back up here and take those F-style clamps and I can kind of work those down in this first hole on the corner. Okay, so this is somewhat critical. At this point, I like to get a clamp on the bottom side of this monster. So I'm clamping on both faces. Sometimes these things might kind of twist on you. It's always good to clamp from both sides. And then we'll just alternate those bar clamps as we move down towards the bottom. I try to keep that form, top edge of that form flat too. I like to put a clamp out on the end of these so I can make sure I'm getting my tails all nice and tight. The laminations, if you notice, I'm going to cut all this off and I'm actually going to use this as my straight line, but as these separate, it's just a good idea to clamp those.